Hello and welcome to ATI 4205 Applied Logistics. Organizations and enterprises around the world differ in terms of mission, scale, and scope. However, all of them aim to deploy the best possible network of facilities worldwide. Underlying this continuous quest, the optimal network deployment lies the facility location and layout design engineering. Each facility of the organization network should be located in an area to optimize the network performance. Actually, location and layout design is being transformed from mostly being a cost minimization project to being a business enabling continuous process. There are lots of factors that affect the decision of selecting the most efficient location of facility. This session will address the warehouse distribution center, warehouse slash distribution center, selection strategies and approaches. Based on the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. businesses spent 1.64 trillion on transportation and warehousing costs in 2018. That accounts for 8% of the U.S. GDP. Storage and other inventory costs jumped 14.8% in 2018 as investors or inventories measured by value increased of 4.6% compared with the prior year. There are more than 400,000 warehouses in the United States, and we said that before that we have lots of warehousing. Before, roughly 20,000 of these warehouses have a building area that exceeds 100,000 square feet. The total supply of U.S. warehousing space is over 6 billion square feet. Warehousing provides time and place utility for raw material, industrial goods, and finished products, allowing firms to use customer service as a dynamic value adding competitive tool. Selecting the proper location to increase efficiency is very important and vital. Selecting a location for a facility is one of the most important decisions a firm can make. The firm can select a location anywhere in the world now. With the open and global trademark and market, you can have your location or the facility location anywhere in the world. Taking a decision to have a factory or a warehouse in a certain location has a long impact on the company's operations. That decision should be made with a goal to maximize the benefits of the location to the firm. Changing the location or selecting a new location is a long-term decision and does not happen that frequent. The decision of the location affects the fixed costs such as the cost of the land, the lease or mortgage, and taxes. In addition, it affects the variable costs such as the cost of labor and utilities. Once committed to a location, many resources and cost issues are difficult to change. Choosing the right warehouse location can make all the difference in how effective, efficient, and profitable a company is. How close the warehouse to suppliers, how close to consumers. The location will assist the firm and the whole supply chain to compete in the market. When considering a warehouse location, there are criteria to consider. These criteria will be on the city, state, region, national, or even international level. Firms need to consider to lease or buy the facility. What will be the taxes associated with buying the facility? What will be the workforce availability, including skills and wages? What are the transportation available and the proximity to transportation hubs? The local factors and the local market, the size of the land or a building and utilities cost, and the zoning restrictions in that area. Leasing or purchasing a warehouse is a major decision. Most leases are based on a long term of 10 to 20 years contract with a penalty if you break that lease. Leasing in the United States is normally based on a square footage per year or month. The table on this slide shows the average price per square foot per year in different locations nationwide. In addition, taxes will differ from one state to another. In some cases, the state might be willing to give the firm tax incentives to bring new jobs and increase the state GDP. And this was one of the issues with Amazon building a facility or a warehouse and selecting the different cities, which city they need to use or they need to select to build their warehouse in, or their major one of the major facilities in. The same for Tesla. Tesla was offered a tax cut for 15 or 20 years just to go to Nevada and establish their mega factory in that area. The firm should make the decision of leasing or buying based on a comparison of the advantages and disadvantages of each option. The firm will have more choices of properties to lease, which might be more affordable if this was the option. To own the property, the firm might have to put down a payment of up to 30%, if not more, of the property value, which might tie up a huge amount of capital. Leasing will lower the risk of that financial commitment. Owning the property means managing that property, including maintenance costs. When it's leased, the firm will focus on growing the business instead of managing the property. Having a leased property will allow growing business to move to a larger premises if needed. If the firm don't have a contract, the landlord can annually increase the value of the lease, which might create an additional cost to the firm. The contract for the lease property will limit any changes to the premises, and the lease might include hidden costs and obligations that the tenant is unaware of. At the end, all the money used in the lease will be lost and no equity will be developed. While when the firm buys the property, the firm will have a long-term commercial fixed cost, no worries about any increases, no landlord to increase, so they are the owners. As an owner, the firm can claim tax deductions for all costs associated with owning, running, and maintaining the business premises. Using a mortgage loan with fixed monthly payments could end up similar to or even lower to lease payments. The firm can use the property as a financial guarantee in dealing with clients, suppliers, and partners. If there is additional space, it can be leased. The firm can also rent out the whole premises if the company outgrow that space, so they can lease it and move on to a bigger space. If the building or land appreciates in value, the company will be able to sell for a profit or increase business lending available for growth. The firm can add walls, knock down walls, or change layout to accommodate their growth without any intervention. When the firms buy the property, they will lose the flexibility of responding to market changes and might force a premature sale, accepting less equity. This land is small, I need to move, but I need to move faster than the growing equity in that land, so you are selling a premature property and accepting less equity. As mentioned before, there will be an associated initial cost with buying the property and tying a huge amount of capital. In addition, the firm will be responsible for managing and maintaining the property, which will add an additional fixed cost for or monthly cost for operations. If the firm decides to lease out the property, finding a tenant can take longer time and may need to offer financial incentives to encourage a tenant to move in. Another criteria to consider is workforce availability and labor skills and wages. Not every geographical location offers the required workforce or the right skills at the right price. When selecting a location, the organization need to pay attention to the local demographics of the state or city being considered. With low workforce availability, demand will be high and wages will be up. If the area has a high level of workforce availability, demand will be low and wages will be less. At the same time, if the workforce does not have the required skills, a gap will be generated, and that can lead to a low level of consumer services or customer services and a reduction in the competitiveness and productivity. The company can close the gap by providing training programs to bring their workforce to the required levels. This chart shows the improvement of skills as a result of proper training. With the current advancement in technology and data, a quick search can be done to obtain the population, educational attainment, characteristics, and income levels. When measuring the cost of workforce, we have to include other factors. In some cases, lower productivity might increase total cost. To calculate the cost per unit, we divide labor cost per day by the number of units produced. There are two examples provided, a US city, which is Boston in this case, and a Mexican city, which is Nikolas. The labor cost per day in Boston is almost 3 times the cost in Nicholas. But when you divide by the number of units produced per day, the cost per unit will be lower in Boston than Nicholas, which shows that we need to take other factors into consideration when calculating the cost per unit. The third criteria is the transportation, the roads, highways, and traffic flow. Warehouse efficiency, transportation cost, customer order fulfillment, and profitability can be impacted by the following factors: accessibility to highway and exit ramps, highway interconnectivity, public transportation penetration, average traffic speed, average traffic volume, traffic peak hours, road safety and conditions, proper road signs and signals. Congested highways, roads, and poor signaling will increase fuel consumption, increase accident rates, and increase insurance rates, and of course time will be wasted. The fourth criteria to consider when choosing a warehouse location is the proximity to airport, railway stations, and ports, like the hubs for transportation. The selection of the warehouse location will be based on the most used mode of transportation in the organization. For example, if the most of the cargo is exported via air, then you want to be as close as possible to the airport. If using water transportation, then you should be closer to a port. In some cases, firms might not find a location close to the required mode of transportation. At that point, the firm should select a location with easy access to highways and roads. The firm can combine modes of transportation to fulfill customer needs. You could use trucking and air, trucking and shipment or ships or waterways. This figure is a comparison between the weights by transportation modes in 2013 and the expected volume in 2040. And you can see the increase in the size in tons for the transportation using the different modes. The fifth criteria to consider when choosing a warehouse location is the market and local environment factors. The proximity of the facility or the selected location to suppliers, producers, and the markets being served will reduce lead time, decrease transportation costs, and increase responsiveness. Proximity to suppliers considering perishable goods or bulky products. Consider major supply chain partners and how to increase supply chain efficiency by strategically selecting the warehouse location. Also, local environmental factors such as water, weather, the conditions, and exposure of natural disasters such as hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and or flooding should also be considered. Warehouse location should be away from neighborhoods, traffic congestions, and rush hour areas. The sixth criteria is building or land availability, the size of the property, and utility costs. When selecting a location for your facility, you need to consider future expansions and company's growth. Um, some of the questions that we need to ask is, are buildings or land available in the area? Does the organization need to move to a different location or different area or different regions? Moving to different location will force the organization to evaluate all involved factors and might lose their workforce, because if you are moving to a different region, you need to find new workforce to work with you. Not everyone will move with the company to the new location. Utilities should be available and with a reasonable cost, especially if the organization is storing frozen food. One of the most important utilities that everyone ignore is internet and communication services. So the availability for the internet in the new location that you are selecting, is very important. You need to know if there is internet access, and what will be the speed for the internet in the new location. The last criteria is the zoning restrictions. Before the organization sign a lease or buy a commercial property, they have to make sure they can legally house the business they want to do at that location. Zoning laws, often called ordinances or land use regulations, uh, state how the company can use the land they own or rent. While the laws vary from place to place, the most frequently used classifications are the commercial, the industrial, residential, agriculture, or mixed use. Zoning laws specify the kind of business you can operate in a particular area. An example of zoning regulations are the specific requirements as to the type of a building or of buildings allowed, the location of the utility lines, the restrictions on accessory buildings, building setbacks, how far should it be from the street or from other boundaries, and the size and the height of the building and the number of rooms allowed. It depends on the area, it depends on the land and the nature of the land. In some places, they will not allow to build high buildings, maybe because they are closer to the airport, so it should not exceed certain number of floors. In addition, it should also have certain number of rooms inside. So all these restrictions will be within the regulation of the zoning for that area. When selecting on a regional level, other factors should be considered, such as the attractiveness of the region, the governmental incentives, and fiscal policies, proximity to raw materials and customers, and construction cost in that region. If the company is selecting on a global level, other factors should be added. So every time you move to a different level, like from the city or state to a regional to national to international, you add more and more factors. When we say global or international, that means you can go to other countries. Going to other countries, now we have political risks, and we have government rules, we have attitudes, we have incentives, and we have cultural and economic issues. We need to look at the availability of supplies and communications. We need to look at the energy availability. We need to look at exchange rates and currency risk. Why would a company select a location for their facility in a different country if they are facing all these issues? There are global attractive factors that encourages these companies to choose a location in a different country, such as trade agreements, technology, labor, material, location cost, savings, proximity to market, or legal and regularity in that area or that country. The company will select the global location considering all related concerns. The company need to look at the different policies for that country and its political stability. They need to look at the cultural differences. They need to look at the workforce education, skills, ethics, and language differences. The company need to consider the availability and quality of raw materials, energy, transportation, infrastructure. Next session, we will address some of the methods and techniques used to select a location. That will be all for this session. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you and have a great day.